Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Rabbi Majeski.
Oh, we hear you today. Okay. Okay, we shall start. So we're in the Mimer on page 46, 47. And he starts off by saying that there are two ways to explain how is it that every year naturally has a munah. How could you naturally have a munah? There are certain things which are natural, they're biological, they're passed down from one generation to the next. But what does it mean, natural belief and faith in Hashem? So he says there's two ways to explain it. The first way is because the neshama l'mayla sees it. Now, what does it mean the neshama l'mayla sees it? This is also a very common subject in Chassidus, and that is based on the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov. Baal Shem Tov asked a question. It says in Gemara, in numerous places, that from time to time, or some of them are every single day, there's a heavenly voice that comes out actually from Har Sinai. There's a heavenly voice that comes out from Har Sinai. One of them says, if you look it up in Pirkei Avos, chapter 6, it says, woe to those people that insult the Torah, they neglect Torah study. There's another heavenly voice that comes out every day and says, Shuvu banim shevavim, my children, return. And many others. So Baal Shem Tov asks, what's the purpose of these voices? Because we don't hear these voices anyway. So if it's for tzaddikim that hear heavenly voices, they don't need it. They're already in a good place. And if it's for people that are not tzaddikim, to inspire them, they don't hear it, so it doesn't inspire them. So Baal Shem Tov answers that the neshama l'mayla hears it. So just to explain a little bit, what does it mean, the neshama l'mayla? So he explains that when the neshama comes down to this world, these are his words, not the entire neshama comes down to this world. There's a part of the neshama that remains up there, and there's a part of the neshama that comes down here. When you hear these words, being that we're humans and we live in a physical world, we always imagine things in a physical way, as if the neshama is up there. Then it stretches like a piece of bubble gum and comes down here. So one part stays up there, stuck in Shemayim, and one part comes down here and goes into the guf. But that's not the way it is. We're talking about a neshama, it's something spiritual. And when we say goes up or goes down or stays up or goes down, it's not about physical space. It's not a difference in the geographic location. It's a difference in level. So let's think of an example of something where you can use the term going down in level and what would it mean to say that part of it goes down and part of it doesn't go down. Anyone is welcome to give an example. The example that comes to my mind is when an adult is relating to a little child. The adult has to sort of go down to the level of the child. They want to play with the child. They can't play a game that adults play. The kid won't relate to it. So he has to play a childish game that a child appreciates. And the adult doesn't normally appreciate such a game. What the adult does, it gets down on the floor, gets down on his hands and knees, and plays with the child like a child plays. So even though the adult goes down to the level of the child, but does he still remain an adult, or he loses his adulthood? He's no longer an adult, he becomes a baby, a 2-year-old? Hopefully not. There might be some that do that. In other words, in essence, he's still who he is. And as soon as he finishes playing, he goes back to whatever his business is. It's for the moment, he goes down to the level of the child. And not only for the moment, even while he's going down to the level of the child, internally, nothing has really changed. He's still the adult and the intelligent adult. I remember reading a story of a man, his father passed away, and he left him a will. And in the will, it said that he shouldn't inherit any of his money until he goes crazy. So he almost went crazy just from reading the will. What kind of, his father was a normal person. His father was a healthy person. His mind was intact to the last minute. How does he leave such a will? It was very disturbed. No matter how much he tried, he couldn't figure it out. So he decided he'll go to the Rav of the community. Very smart man. Maybe he'll figure it out. He goes to the Rav's house, and as he gets close to the door, he hears a lot of noise. So he looks through the window on the door, and he sees that the rabbi of the community is on the floor, on his hands and knees. One of his children is sitting on his neck. Another one is sitting on his back. And the rabbi is crawling under the table. He was so embarrassed for him, he decided, let me go home. I'll come back later. Anyway, he comes back an hour or two later, and sure enough, the rabbi's sitting by a table. He's looking into a sefer. So he knocks on the door, and he walks in and shows the rabbi the will. And the rabbi's also shocked. What then? He's thinking and thinking and thinking, and suddenly he breaks into a smile. Says, if you would have been here 2 hours ago, you would understand what your father meant. He meant until you get married and have kids and go crazy, he doesn't want you to inherit his possession. In other words, here's a man who's a Rav, an intelligent person, a Torah scholar. And what is he doing? He's on his hands and knees on the floor, under the table, playing like a 2-year-old. But when that happens, the pneumius internally and in reality, he hasn't changed. So here's an example of going down, so to speak. But in essence, part of me still remains wherever I am. That's number one. Number two, if I ask you a question, so what would you say if we were to talk in a language of percentage? 90% goes down and 10% remains an adult? Or 99% is an adult and 1% sort of goes down? I'm not talking exactly about these numbers. I just mean more or less. Which is the more and which is the less? It's really not such a hard question. Come on. Unless you're in the 2-year-old mode right now.
It could be either way.
Could be either way.
I'd say more has to stay up.
In other words, I would say, of course, for the most part, I'm an adult. At this very moment, anything that's really important for an adult is still important for me, and I still am. This is just at a very superficial, external level. I'm coming down to the level of a child, but in essence, I haven't changed. I'm the same person with all my personality, all my thoughts. And if he's like a Rav or a scholar, all those things are just present. I have the whole Torah in my head now, just like before. It's all there, just on a very superficial, external level. Some people might not even call it going down. Nothing happened, nothing changed. No, there is a certain element of me that has to bring myself down right now to the mentality of a 2-year-old. But for the most part, if I would use the term 99.99 of me, is who I always am, and there's a little small percentage of me that lowers myself to the level of a child. So the Baal Shem Tov says the same with the neshama. Before the neshama comes down, what is the capacity of the neshama? The neshama understands godliness at a whole different level. The neshama sees godliness. It says that in Gan Eden, the neshama hears Torah teaching from Hashem, Torah teaching from great sages. So the neshama hears and sees and experiences only godliness. There's no gashmis, no gashmistic pleasures. It's a pure spiritual world. When we say the neshama comes down and is no longer that way, it's just a small percentage of the neshama that has this descent. But the Baal Shem Tov says, for the most part, the neshama still sees and hears and experiences everything that it saw and experienced before. That hasn't changed. But we're not conscious of it. The part that I'm conscious of is the part that came down to the guf, and now starts relating to a physical world, a material world, and we're not even aware that there's something more to me. But the reality is that the neshama still maintains its original spiritual status and its original spiritual capacity, that it's able to see and hear and experience godliness in the most revealed way, just like before it came down. It has that, there's a part of the neshama that hasn't changed. Follow so far? So then when there's a heavenly voice, and the heavenly voice says to do tshuva, I don't hear a thing, but my neshama who hears and sees spirituality hears that voice. And as a result of that, it inspires my neshama. The inspiration flows to the part of the neshama that I'm conscious of. And the Baal Shem Tov says that's why sometimes people could be aroused to tshuva. Nothing really happened. They have no idea what happened. It's not someone said something. Just one morning you wake up and you're in that kind of frame of mind, or just out of the blue, you're davening and suddenly you feel an excitement, an inspiration, you feel uplifted. The reason is because my neshama right now is seeing or hearing something is going on spiritually. So even though I don't feel it, but I do feel the end result. I feel the inspiration, because what it's feeling up there flows and it trickles down to the part of the neshama that I'm conscious of. So if a person comes to someone's house for Shabbos, and they sit down by the Shabbos table, first time they're experiencing Shabbos. Person goes to the Kotel, first time they were by the wall in Eretz Yisrael. Person comes to the Rebbe to get a dollar, was never there before. And they walk out and something is wow. And you're trying to figure out what's the wow. I mean, if the Rebbe told them something about the future, told them something about the past, did something miraculous, nothing happened. You're standing in front of a wall, nothing happened. You're eating fish, meat, drinking wine, nothing happened. What is this wow? What are they getting all inspired about? And the answer is because Shabbos, there's a kedusha, there's holiness in the room. By the wall, there's holiness in the room. When you're standing in front of a tzaddik, there's holiness in the room. I see nothing, but my neshama experiences and sees it. And the neshama gets all excited. And when the neshama gets excited, not me, but the excitement of the neshama trickles down to me, and I get excited. And I can't explain it, but I feel uplifted, and I feel inspired, and I feel wanting to connect to this. And that's where very often a change takes place in a person. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and many other things. It's all based on the same explanation. So this explains the story in Gemara, that there was a prophet, Daniel. He saw a prophetic vision, and then it says that the people standing next to him didn't get to see anything. They weren't on his level, but they were overcome with fear that they had to go hide because they were so overwhelmed with fear. And then the Gemara says, but they didn't see anything. Where's the fear coming from? And the answer is the neshama, the mazel, the Gemara calls it mazel. The mazel saw it. And because the neshama up there saw it, again, they overcome with fear. And the fear part, that part trickles down and flows down to the conscious. So therefore they overcome with fear, even though they didn't see what it is that caused the fear. I think, just to make it a little bit more down to earth, something we can relate to, is in basic psychology, if a person chas v'sholom went through a trauma many years ago, and sometimes they even forgot about it, and something happens which triggers that fear or whatever feeling they went through when they had the trauma. So they don't know why I'm feeling this way, but they're all upset or all worried, or they feel something going on inside them. It's a result of the fact that the subconscious remembers the trauma, and that's why I'm feeling this way. But consciously, I don't even know why. So how come I feel it? Because the subconscious knows it very clearly. And therefore, the subconscious has that emotion. The emotion trickles down to the conscious, and that's why I'm feeling whatever it is that I'm feeling. Am I right? Okay, there's the expert.
question.
I think trauma is one of your expertise, no?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's like so relatable because you know your subconscious is with you and in you. It's not
It's part of you.
somewhere over there
Exactly.
in your being, but
That's also a good example. The subconscious is not on a different planet. It's not in a different location. It's just an inner, deeper layer of me. Yes, Nati.
So why do we say that the neshama that is up there sees and not the neshama that is in our bodies? Because we can say that our neshama got excited about that spiritual energy that was happening. So what?
Oh, you mean in reference to
Yeah.
Amuna? Oh, so Amuna is the same thing. The neshama up there doesn't need Amuna in a sense to believe in Hashem. It sees, it experiences. Like I don't need Amuna to believe that there's a clock on the wall. I'm saying it. I see it's daytime now. Yeah, there is a clock on the wall. So I don't need Amunah. The Neshama doesn't need Amunah. It's absolute certain to the soul that Hashem is there. The conscious part of my soul, I don't see anything. I just see Gashmias. But because the soul up there sees it, the soul has the absolute certainty about Hashem. The certainty also flows down to the part of the Neshama that's in me. Now, we're used to the word mazel, like say mazel tov, which means like good luck and things like that. But the word mazel in Hebrew comes from the word nozel, means to flow. And that's what it means, that there's a part of the neshama up there that sees godliness, which in itself is amazing. But the more amazing part, which is relevant to us, that it flows from there to here, that I feel it. I feel the end result, yes.
This is a little controversial, but say a Jew doesn't have all five senses, say they don't have vision, is it implied that they're on a holier level because they don't have like Gashmiistic certainty, like their Muna comes from someplace that's like so much deeper?
Stump the rabbit.
But no, there's something, you didn't stump me today. There is something related to what you just said. I don't know if this is the reason, but I'll tell you what I'm referring to. It says that Hashem doesn't apply his name to even a tzaddik only after their passing, because humans are humans, and only after their passing and their life went through with complete observance and tzaddik, Hashem will apply his name. But if not, who knows, maybe something will change. So Hashem doesn't say, I'm the God of Abraham only after he passed. I'm the God of Yaakov only after he passed. And why by Yitzchak does Hashem say it during his lifetime? So the answer is because Yitzchak was blind, that's what it says. A blind person has a less of a Yetzer Hara, and therefore, or has no Yetzer Hara, so therefore, probably less of a Yetzer Hara. Therefore, Hashem was able to apply his name. Which means that I think that is really coming from a different place, that there's a certain degree of pleasure of life that unfortunately a person who's blind doesn't experience like a person who could see. And as a result of that, the temptation is not the same, and the need to resist is not the same. So it's more reliable that he'll remain at tzaddik. But I don't know if it's connected to the neshama part that you're saying. There is a discussion in Gemara whether a blind person's mitzvahs are greater than a person that sees, or because a blind person, according to some opinions, is not obligated to do mitzvahs because they're blind. So some say, therefore, when they do mitzvahs, it's even greater than some that sees. And there's another opinion that says, no, when you do mitzvah because you're commanded, that's greater. That's another discussion. Okay. So this is called the etzem haneshama, the essence of the soul, sees godliness. Not the essence of the soul, I would call it, sorry, I just made myself problems. This is called the higher part of the soul, the head of the soul. So let's look at the words inside again. The second paragraph on page 46, 47. Lefi shemazlayu chazi, because the mazel sees it, which means the part of the soul that is in heaven, that never descended again. Never descended means it never lost its original spiritual capacity. And this causes, and so the soul in a spiritual way sees godliness and experiences it in a very real way. And therefore it has the absolute certainty in Hashem. So that causes the part of the soul that is invested in the body, which is the conscious part of the soul, to have belief in divinity. So the fact that I feel the certainty about Hashem without proving it philosophically, scientifically, where does the certainty come from? Because there's a part of me that sees, so that causes the certainty, and the certainty flows to the conscious me. But then there's another explanation, which is even deeper. And the second explanation I mentioned to you last time is very rare. In this mimer, the Rebbe not only talks about it, but the whole mimer elaborates on it. But this is a new insight. You have to look and search, is there a source for something like this? And the Rebbe brings a source. Void beer, then there's a second explanation. The shirish amuna me'etzem haneshama. The source of this faith comes from a deeper place, comes from the essence of the soul, which is even higher than the part of the soul that sees godliness. So in what ways is it different? He is kashus atzmis. The fact that the neshama is bound with godliness is something so deep, so innate, that it's totally independent of any other external reason. It's not dependent on any cause, not even vision. Even that is not necessary. What does that mean? I would think we can explain it like, if I see something, it's absolute certainty. So what about the fact that I know that I am here and I am who I am? Is that because I look in the mirror and I see myself? Do I need to see myself to know that I am who I am? Or I just know I am because I am. It's me. In other words, if we say that the soul sees godliness, by definition, it means it's something which is separate from Hashem, but because it sees Hashem, it has a certainty about Hashem. There's another level in the soul, even deeper. It doesn't even need to see. It is one with Hashem. And therefore, it feels, it is aware and knowledgeable of Hashem's presence because it and Hashem are one. And what is that? The essence of the soul. You know, from other places that when you use the term external or internal, it's very relative, it depends. So what we're saying here in a sense is that the part of the soul that has certainty because it sees is a more external level of the soul. It's not the essence. The part of the soul that doesn't even need vision is just one with Hashem as the deepest part of the soul, and therefore it doesn't need anything to give it certainty. It just is. What is the difference between the two? As we go along, it gets a little bit more, complicated, but hopefully we'll get through it. I just want to say one thing, and then we'll do what it says inside. In general, the difference is like this. If the soul's certainty about Hashem is because it sees Hashem, and therefore there's no doubts, but the mere fact that the soul is sort of something separate that needs to see Hashem to have the certainty. So there is a possibility, a remote possibility that something very strong and very powerful, that something could come and get in between me and Hashem. But if the Amunah comes from the fact that me, myself, and my essence and Hashem are one, then there's nothing that can get in between me and me. That's impossible. In other words, that level of faith that comes because the neshama sees Hashem, generally will stand up to all the difficulties, all the tests in life, but there could be something that might be so challenging that I will lose the faith. But when a person is able to experience faith in Hashem, that comes from the place that the neshama and Hashem are one, there's absolutely nothing impossible for anything to get in between that, just like nothing to get in between me knowing me. And he's going to say that a little bit later, not on this page, but a little bit further on page 51. But first, let's see what he explains here. So we're on page 48, 49 now. What are the difference between the two? This is another point. What is the difference? Even if a person has Amunah, there's a difference. The difference is Shamuna b'neshama melubeshes beguf. The Amunah that the neshama has, the part of the neshama that's invested in the body, that comes because the neshama l'mayla sees, that Amunah is b'pchinas makif. To some extent, it's makif. It's to some extent, it's outside of me. The kevish neshama shalamayla, ilamayla mislapshu, is being that it comes from the part of the soul that's outside of my body. In other words, outside of my consciousness. So that amuna that exists there is also, in some sense, outside of my consciousness. So therefore, my amuna could also be in a way that it doesn't really penetrate fully and completely my consciousness, that I have full amuna consciously. But in order for the amuna that's in the part of the soul that's in the body, is that it should really be permeating every fiber of its being and every fiber of its consciousness in an absolute way. For that to happen, it's Aidei Gilui Hiskashus Atzmis the Etzem Neshama. This happens when I become aware and I become conscious of the higher level of Amunah, that my essence of my soul and Hashem's essence are one. And why isn't that makif? When I say the essence of the soul is the essence of the subconscious, is the essence of the conscious, it's not something outside of me that's inspired me, but it's me. I'll soon explain. And therefore, the Amunah is the Pnimius. There's a general rule, a principle in Chassidus, which is a thread through everything we learn about in Chassidus, is that in general, anything that comes from the outside and affects me and inspires me in one way or another, no matter how powerful that inspiration is, in a certain sense, it's considered makif. Meaning it's still external and it's outside of me. I always use this mushal just because in this mushal it's very sort of blatant, it's very pronounced, is that if there's a piece of paper that's flying in the air because of the wind, no matter how high it flies, no matter how fast it flies, but being that it's flying because of the wind, the paper was really never changed to becoming a flying object. It's the wind that's moving. Or if something is sitting on the water, and the water there's a current, and the water is running very fast, no matter how fast the water runs, no matter how far this water goes, even if it goes for miles and hundreds of miles away, this object sitting on the water that just traveled hundreds of miles is not a moving object. It's still totally stationary. What's moving is the water. But because it's on top of the water, it looks as if it's moving. It looks as if the piece of paper is flying. But in essence, the paper hasn't changed. The only way that something could change is if the change comes from the inside. So to a certain extent, and relatively speaking, if the let's look at the part of the neshama that's in the body and part of the neshama that's outside of the body, as if it were two separate souls. So that part of the soul sees godliness and has certainty. And that certainty inspires me. It's like someone else inspiring me. And when someone else inspires me, it's not really 100% me, it's the other person's inspiration within me. There's a story with the Alter Rebbe that he was once in a shul. Obviously, he was traveling, and there was a chassid there of a different Rebbe. That Rebbe was also one of the students of the Maggid. His name was Chaikel Hamdurer. And this Reb Chaikel, when he davened, he was on fire like no one, hardly anything to compare to. And he had a few thousand chassidim all in the area where they lived in Russia. And when he was davening, they were davening. Because they were so connected, they were on fire. So the Alter Rebbe walks into the shul, and there's someone davening, and the chassid who was with the Alter Rebbe points to that man and says, "Look, he's on fire." So the Alter Rebbe said, "No, he's not on fire. Reb Chaikel is on fire." In other words, his Rebbe is the one that's on fire. Even though he is on fire, but being that his fire is the reflection of his Rebbe's fire, it's not really his, it's his Rebbe's. So I guess, think of it this way. You walk into a room, not this room, walk into the next room, and you have a flame. So you look at the wall that's full of mirrors, and there's a flame in the mirror. Is the mirror on fire? No. Something else is on fire. But the mirror reflects that fire. So it's not real fire. So anything that comes from outside of myself is not really me to some extent. So if we say that the soul that's up there is not the conscious me, it's sort of outside of the conscious me, and that part of my soul has the emunah. So even though it's projected into me, but because it's coming from outside of me, so the emunah is still in some degree outside of me. But if the emunah comes because I and Hashem are absolutely one, then that's not outside of me, that's me. Because the essence of the soul is, every part of the soul has the same essence. There's no two essences. So therefore, that's the difference, that this is makif, and the higher level, that's when the emunah is pnimius. You understand this? B'pnimius or b'makif? Yeah.
So is the emunah that we are feeling coming from our neshama that is like up there?
Oh, so he's going to explain. Generally speaking, when we feel emunah, it's coming from the lower level. When there's a big nisayon, a big test, and a person, even if a person's chas v'shalom threatened to give up his life and he doesn't give up his life, that usually comes because that triggers the higher level of emunah, which comes from the essence. And when that is revealed, it's inseparable.
So that excitement that the person feels is like just a reflection.
No, we're using it as a mushal. It's really me. Let's not forget it's my neshama, and it's all me. Relatively speaking, if it comes because of the higher level of the neshama, then it's like a reflection. In other words, like I gave the example before, I wasn't learning something specific. I wasn't doing anything specific. I'm sitting and reading something, and all of a sudden I feel an inspiration, I feel an excitement. So because it's coming from outside of me, there's a mimer from the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe said the Hasidim came to me and they complained that sometimes they daven and they're very inspired and it lasts for a few days and sometimes even a few weeks, and then it disappears as if it never was here, and therefore they feel that the whole thing was just fake and they're very distraught about it. That means my davening was a fake. The Alter Rebbe said, no, it wasn't fake, it was real. But the excitement and the inspiration wasn't generated by my own thought process and learning process. It was generated because something was going on in Shemayim, and you had the merit to feel what's going on a higher plane. So because of a heavenly wind, when the wind stops, everything goes back down. So yes, if something, an inspiration or excitement comes, it's not because I was thinking about Hashem and I worked on it and my knowledge developed and stimulated a feeling in my heart, but I'm still excited. That means it's something outside of me, more like a reflection. And even though it's great to feel that way, but it's not going to last. It's not going to be permanent. This was the general difference between, there's something we have to talk about more. Usually we get a chance to talk about Yutas Kislev this year. Somehow it didn't work out. But this is one of the differences between the Alter Rebbe and the other Rebbes, that they didn't believe in learning Chassidus for the individual. They believed in learning a little bit of Chassidus, but not in depth and not meditating on it, not spending a lot of time on it. They said it's something too lofty for the average person. That's for the Rebbe. But by the chassid being connected to the Rebbe's inspiration will inspire him, like this Reb Chaim Lamadura. The Alter Rebbe said, no, that's not good enough. You need the inspiration to come from me. Now, if I myself will think about Hashem, meditate on his greatness, and my thoughts will get me excited, that excitement is probably almost insignificant compared to feeling the excitement of a tzaddik. There's so much more. So therefore they felt that's better. The Alter Rebbe said it's better to have a little bit of feeling, but the feeling is my own. It's my own that I created through my avoda. rather than a lot of excitement and inspiration that is really a reflection of someone else. That's one of the major differences between the two approaches. So now he's going to explain that this is what Moshe Rabbeinu does. Remember we said before that every year has Amunah. So what is Moshe Rabbeinu accomplishing by feeding us Amunah? That's the difference. Without Moshe Rabbeinu, we have Amunah, but that comes from the fact that the neshama sees godliness. Moshe Rabbeinu is able to bring us to become more conscious of the fact that the neshama is one with Hashem, the deeper Amunah. And therefore, the Amunah becomes pneumius. So let's do the next few lines. Now we can understand the order in the Maimer, the sequence. At first, he explains the idea of Kosis Lamoyer. It's connected to Raya Mehemet, to saying that Moshe is the shepherd of faith. The fact that Moshe Rabbeinu sustains us with this faith and feeds us faith, meaning that he is responsible for that faith to become pneumius, really internalized, and we feel it in a conscious way. How does he accomplish that? Moshe Rabbeinu reveals, he causes us to actually be conscious of the essence of the neshama, which is higher than the part of the neshama that sees godliness. And that essence is called Mo'er, the source of light. So why does it bring down the idea that the olive has to be crushed? So he explains in the Maimer that in order to bring out this level of Amunah, in order to be in touch with my essence, that's mainly in the time of Golus, because the essence in normal circumstances doesn't become revealed. Normally that essence is very hidden. But in the time of Golus, when there's things that happen that warrant Mesiras Nefesh, that triggers the essence of the neshama, and that triggers this higher level of Amunah that'll even give me the ability to give up my life for Hashem. The next debate could be on the difference between Amunah and Seichel. Using intellect or having Amunah. Yes.
So whoever feels it in us, it's not saying outside source. He's like somehow opening up our
Essence.
own essence.
Right.
It's not like the mazel.
Right. Again, let's remember the mazel, we can't call it outside completely, but being that the mazel is outside of my consciousness, so to some degree, it's outside of me. But the essence, every part of the essence is me. And the Rebbe reveals Moshe Rabbeinu, and same thing in every generation, allows me to be conscious of my essence. And when I'm conscious of my essence, that's me. It's not something outside of me.
So the muzzle and essence, like it's one thing. Muzzle is more external, while
Mazel is more external, and the essence is the deeper, right? Mazel is sort of a conscious level of the neshama, but we're not conscious of it.
Yeah.
The essence is the source of everything.
It's not the yechida.
It is the yechida, yeah.
But the yechida is also considered not.
In this Maimer, you will learn something new about yechida. That is more depth to yechida. There's a level deeper than yechida.
Does it explain how he does it?
How Moshe Rabbeinu does it? I can't reveal everything, We'll see. It gets a little bit more complicated later, but I mean, generally speaking, Moshe Rabbeinu is the essence of all neshamas. We'll see. We'll have to. Let's wait till we get there. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. Okay, so we're stopping here on page 50-51, and we'll do that tomorrow, Mitzvah Hashem. Good job, everybody. Today is Chamisha B'Av, Shvat, 15th day of Shvat, Rosh Hashanah. So happy New Year for the trees. How are you feeling, Chama? Are you okay?
Hashem created me with voice there.
Okay, Baruch Hashem.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Very welcome. Have a great day.
Thanks, Rabbi.
Bye. Have a great day. Anyone know how Miriam is doing? Feeling better? Yeah? I keep hearing that. I don't know where the source is, but I keep hearing. I heard about it only recently, the last few years. I don't know where it's coming from. What? The Rebbe always said Chamisha B'Shvat. That's true. But it's as if there's something wrong with saying Tu B'Shvat. I don't know what that could be. That always happens. Okay. Okay, so everybody.